We're here with Anjuli Thompson. I said that right?
You said it correct.
Good, good. So tell us about yourself. And this is the Chief. Welcome to Chief's Brief. Thank you for coming.
Chief's Brief is the
Chief's Brief.
I love this. Okay, well, my name is Anjuli Thompson. I own House Counseling, and I've got 2 locations, Oxford and Rainbow City. And I've been in practice for about 10 years.
Awesome.
So I do a lot of stuff. I don't just do counseling. Owning the practice is really my most favorite thing. I'm a business girl. So earlier we were talking, I said, I actually don't like to identify as a counselor so much anymore. Like I'm an entrepreneur, but I like to make money and I like to do things. And it's really fun in business because there's so many things you can do to make money that are outside of like the counseling name or title.
Yeah.
So I really enjoy that.
So I have a question. Describe the difference between a counselor and a psychiatrist for those who don't like, a lot of people don't differentiate.
So counselor, therapist, whatever, our title is LPC. It stands for Licensed Professional Counselor. The next step above that's going to be a psychologist, which will be a PsyD, PSYD,
Yeah.
and then a PhD, which is a 7-year doctor. But those people are usually academic.
Yeah.
And then a psychiatrist is a doctor, but with the prescribing powers.
Got you. Okay.
Which I've looked in all these, it's a lot of money to do all those things. And at the same time, if you make a really good relationship with like a nurse practitioner or like a doctor, you can write letters for meds that you know that your people need and they'll do it. So,
well, I don't know if this is how it works, but it seems like it's tiered in the section. Like, well, hey, if you can handle it at the counselor level, you don't have to go to the psychiatrist level.
You don't. You don't. And that's the thing is like counselors are more like outpatient behavioral health. So, but of course you've got like master's level counselors. You've got other counselors that might work in like community mental health, like facilities and stuff. So it all just depends on what the agency's requirement is.
So tell me how you link to law enforcement. Cause this show, we try to give some information not only to law enforcement officers, but the community. They can kind of, I kind of built this thing for our community, but it's having further outreach than that, which is good. So tell us how you link to law enforcement, sort of.
Well, so originally I actually started working in the court system, and I worked in the court system for almost 10 years. I worked for a judge. I was a traffic clerk. And so a lot of my colleagues were law enforcement officers, and this was in Calhoun County. I started in Marshall County, actually.
Really?
And then transferred to JSU. I was doing my undergrad. Started working for Ted Hooks in the circuit court. And like I said, my friends were cops.
Yeah.
And then I met my husband. He was a narcotics officer over there in Calhoun County.
Yeah. Young.
He was the baby of all the old, I say like it was the cowboy era, like the very end of before it all shifted.
Yeah.
And so we got together, and then we've been together for 17 years. And
that's awesome.
Through that time, when I was in school, I came from kind of like a divorced family and crazy background. So I was like, okay, I can't get a divorce. And I learned that in law enforcement, the divorce rates were like 75%.
Oh, that's terrible.
So I was like, what do we got to do? So I started researching families. It kind of became like my mission to like keep the families together. And then I became the president of the auxiliary over there for the FOP. For about 10 years, hosted a police ball. Like my job was like to keep the families together, and I did memorial services. I was deep in it. And then now I'm kind of like the old burnout. Like,
divorce affects law enforcement pretty bad.
Yes.
I mean, older guys telling me, if you ain't on number 2, you ain't really a cop
That's
yet.
True.
I mean, like, oh, he ain't even divorced yet. Which is terrible to say.
Well, that's the truth though. And then after that, once I got into the field, I started really like educating police. So now I have a course. It's called 10 Deadly Areas of Law Enforcement. I teach it through Virtual Academy. I teach it live a lot of the time. So I've constantly met cops from all over, and it's my mission to teach about stress management, like really like what you can do to like help your own wellness all around. Yeah,
I think we came across sort of your work through Jacksonville State. And, I sent one of my command staff members to a class up there, and he said, hey, you got to have this girl on your podcast. She's great. She's super smart and super intelligent. Got a lot of information. And, mental wellness is so by TV show, cops, and that all of how counseling works with cops is that you see that, they got in this bad incident, and then how they're forced to go to the counselor until he says they can come back to duty. Well, that's not really how it works in the real life. Okay, that's not how this works. I don't currently have one that I contract with that's like just the person for here. But I would like to. I mean, I think that's a good idea. I think that's a good move for law enforcement agencies is to have somebody that the only contracted one is the initial psych eval. That's right now.
Yeah.
If for those people that don't know, when you come into law enforcement, you have to have a psych evaluation. I feel like you probably do those.
Yeah, I love those. Are my favorites.
Do you think that's a good thing, or do you think it's just kind of a checkbox?
I actually talked about this in my class not too long ago. They're very flawed.
Yeah.
But it's because, I do fit for duty evals too, which I love, but that is an extended period of time and it gives you more time to sit and assess and evaluate.
Yeah.
The pre-employment stuff, we're really dependent on like y'all vetting them really well before they come in, because I have a psychologist that actually works for me in my practice, and I can use her to do the MMPI exams and all those long tests, but I don't even like those because
that's the 100. Is that the 100 questions
it's
that
like
you fill out?
It's like 3-4 hours. And the thing is, like, I don't like those tests because I get bored, so I'm going to be deceptive on these tests.
And some of the questions are like,
and they don't make sense. And there've been really good law enforcement officers. I've actually done an eval following a failure. Like someone has failed one of the evals, and someone told me one time like a failure happened because he owned too many weapons. Like it was his hobby, and I'm like, okay, well, he's prior military, like infantry. He's very well versed in using guns, needs to be. And so I was confused about why that person failure. Also didn't understand the culture. And so they're very flawed, because I've had some that I've passed that showed up to the academy hammered and failed out. But every single time you learn more and more, like how to read and the right questions to ask. And I've gotten better and better at them. And now you're getting a lot more like really young green guys, you're like 19, 20 that's when Brian started law enforcement. He was 19.
Yeah.
And I love that you've got a blank canvas, but they're also 19. So you're working with developmentally a child, like
100%.
And that's the thing, is you don't know how well they're going to develop into the culture.
And I think nowadays, though, and that's I'm glad you said that. I think nowadays a 19-year-old now was not the 19 when I was 19. All. I mean, shoot, I had already been promoted. I think I made sergeant at 19 in the infantry.
Yes.
In the Army. That was
so
me.
Different.
But they're still. That's right. I mean, I have an 18-year-old, so I know. I mean, he's not ready to.
And it's really hard to base it off. And I've done some, evaluations with like seasoned officers too. I mean, I had one that kind of caused a little bit of a stink throughout the state because he failed. But the way I look at them, and I hate to give all my secrets away, is from a very like peer support lens. Like I'm looking at what is your baseline now stress wise?
Yeah.
Because I want to see how well your system is going to maintain you in this field. And so I have a really good process, a very good assessment. And then I really put my reasoning behind why they will be okay right now. But then I'm also putting recommendations to watch for, because there are certain things that people can say that I can also kind of pinpoint and be like, okay, you need to watch for this because I'm very well versed on projection and stuff like that. So I will kind of give recommendations. And then I use that opportunity to destigmatize mental health. Because you're sitting in my office half the time, I'm in my gym clothes, like I'm just, it's comfortable. Like it's in an old house. Like, and so I'm like, hey, this is what it feels like. And when you leave, you're going to be an inactive client of mine. So you're going to have my number. And half the time I just have to remind people at that point when they come in, like, okay, how's your baseline looking? Like, how's your sleep? Are you drinking enough water? Like, what's your protein looking like? Sometimes we just got to reboot and things feel fine. So I use it as like an education tool, and I'll even note that in there.
I don't think people understand how much negativity an officer sees on a daily basis. Okay, and look, the pay is not great.
Oh gosh,
so we put all these standards, right? And I kind of wonder, like, is there the same standards when you're hiring a physician? Let's just say physician, okay? When you're hiring a physician. Is there do they have to take tests and they have to maintain, there's a lot to being a cop. Like, not only do you have to make sure that you're hey, if you have some mental stuff, I think that's why the stigmatism's there. A lot of departments, if you have an officer that is, let's say, hey, I'm having some issues, mental health issues. Bro, he's out on an island because I can tell you, I understand it. I understand the departments because from my point of view, you like, well, man, I mean, what a risk for on our side to have somebody that's having an issue, right? Well, it's not that part. That part is handled, right? But it's the coming back. Okay, so am I on a risk island out here with this person or whatever? Even though, I mean, that sucks. He can't. So he's not human. He can't have a
That's
human
the hardest
issue.
part is, again, like, I've worked with several agencies. I work with Oxford a lot, like, on even looking at policy, because I'm a policy girl, I'm telling you. Like, I've got a 150-page policy for my business, and people are like, what the crap? And I'm like,
that's not normal for a regular business.
I learned in small claims. Like, I worked for a small claims judge. I'm all about contracts and stuff. So I actually like to talk with law enforcement sometimes on policy and, like, business, because as much as it's really hard for you to be in this business as the chief, because it kind of is like my business. I'm in the business of feelings.
Yeah.
Okay. It sucks because at the end of the day, like, I'm working with 1099 contractors.
Yeah.
So I have to love you just enough, but you still have to follow the policy. You've got law enforcement that you have to care about enough.
Yeah.
But you also can't do that, or the business will fail.
That's right.
And so I also talked to, a bunch of people about that, like maintaining the balance of that. Like, how do you take care of your people while maintaining the balance of business and operating safely, so that you don't have these things that come up then bite you in the ass in the end, And
I don't know. I have a really good crew here. Okay. And I feel like it's I don't know how to explain it. It's sort of like putting a football team together and like having people in certain positions and do a good job at this. And, everybody's good at different things. I mean, one officer may be good at dealing with the public and going to events, and the other, like, I tell people this all the time. When they come in, they say, hey, he was mean to me. I was like, okay, look, so you have a business and other people have a business. I said, I have 30 guys plus or minus that work here. I said, now you go put together 30 people. That's the nicest people you ever met upon talking to them. So you can't do it. It's not possible. Those people listening, that you're a type A person. Like, so you have to like for me, I'm not a type A person. I have to force myself to be assertive, and it's a struggle. That's the struggle for me is to be, I don't want to say mean, but like for me to be assertive and like tell people bad news and say, hey, no, you're not going to get that job. That's the hard part for me.
Right.
Because I'm the opposite. But some people, the hard part is to be the like, how may I help you? That's their struggle.
Right.
They struggle exact opposite.
And leadership is that's the thing too, though, is leadership in itself is an art, and you have to constantly refine it. And so that's what, even I take a bunch of these business courses. That's what I love, business courses, because she's taught me about like culture and systems, and I'm constantly looking at systems, like how are my systems working? Not only that can be applied in your home. It can be applied with yourself. It can be applied with your agency. And so I like to talk about those things too, because it's like, what are your systems looking like? What systems are failing? What systems need to be refined? Whenever you have growth, especially, you've got to redefine your systems. And that's what sucks about policy too, is we want things to be black and white. That's human. Awesome. We want to be on autopilot. We don't want to have to think. But when something's harder than it has to be, that's where you got to take a step back. You got to look at, okay, what's not working? How do we do this better? How do we communicate through it? And not only that, like in a business, like I said, that's what I also teach cops. I see a lot of cops on my caseload. And so I'm constantly saying those same universal things like, hey, what are your systems looking like? What doesn't have a system? What are your financial systems?
Yeah.
What is your household system? Because like, who takes care of the majority of the domestic tasks, and does it need to be refined and balanced? Because sometimes you've got your wife that's home upset. I was dogging dudes, of course, in my class for a minute, and I was like, God bless our woman hearts. Like I told Brian, when he was in narcotics, like I grew up in law enforcement with him, and I was the perfect wife because I value business. I value the job. So I was like, go, whatever you got to do. The only time I cried was one time I was like 9 months pregnant. Duty called, and then I was like, those heads, and he was like, okay, let you go. Bye. Closes the door, upset. But it was very, I was the perfect wife for him because I was like, go. I adjusted. But that also destroyed my nervous system in the process, because there comes a point where that's what happens in law enforcement. Have you ever heard of dysautonomia?
No.
Okay, well, dysautonomia is kind of like what I say is almost the core issue of law enforcement. Yeah. Now, if you look at it from a medical diagnosis, dysautonomia is basically when your nervous system isn't functioning, and they usually will.
Is this what we put up?
Diagnose. Well, they'll diagnose it because of like your blood pressure drops and you pass out and faint, stuff like that. Well, dysautonomia actually is where your nervous system is affected. Like you might be having some sort of reaction to a trigger, or I hate using that word. You might be perceiving something to be a threat that's not even threatening, and it's because, like you said, okay, so. In the job, of course, you're on, you've got to go. Sometimes you're on, sometimes you're off. So your nervous system is literally going through this up and down battle all day long.
Yeah.
And then you have to reintegrate yourself into the home.
Yeah.
And so it's like you shut down, you're off, you're done. Yeah. Doom scroll time.
That's it, 100%. And you get an off shift. Yes. And let's say you have a bad shift or one where like you're amped up. If you're like Sergeant Mike over here, you delivered the baby. You delivered the baby that night, so you're just going to go home and like everything's going to be the best
time to eat.
Like I agree. That's huge. I mean, I can't even say that now. I'm in an administrative role, so I don't deal with that anymore like the guys are dealing with it. But I know they are because I get the phone calls of what happened. Like, hey, we did this. I'm like, man, that sounds crazy.
Wow.
Okay.
Yeah, and usually it's the things that law enforcement sees really, you're like, I've seen the body cams and I've talked, and it's usually not those things all the time that are the issue. It's going home to the regulation. It's learning how to function in a regulated state.
Yeah.
Because when you go there, it's almost like your nervous system doesn't know what to do now. It doesn't have the chaos around it and the uncontrolled setting. To keep it balanced. So then you go into a very controlled, regulated setting, and your body will start getting crazy and going off. And the next thing you know, you're self-sabotaging and you're blowing up about something. You got testosterone issues and adrenal fatigue and all kinds of stuff. Yeah. And it's like, whoa.
Yeah.
Let's figure out how to
throw in night shift to that.
Yes, so, gosh. So then you disrupt your sleep patterns, and then you're eating on the rush and you're not staying as hydrated, and you're running on energy drinks. And so it's like, fantastic, but that's where I go back to, again, what is your baseline looking like? Because if I can get a more solid baseline and I can focus on the things, there's a very simple like psychology 101 thing that they teach us, which is Maslow's hierarchy of needs. If you look at Maslow's, the very bottom level of that is food, water, sleep. It's food, water, sleep. So it's like, if I can make sure that part of my system is secure and the basic needs are met all the time in a very regulated, controlled, systematic way, everything else is going to build off of it. And the first thing that usually goes whenever you have completely reached your max on stress is sleep. So your sleep patterns are going to be disrupted. Well, whenever you have sleep pattern disruption, then that's where your body starts to get physically stressed. When your body's physically stressed, your brain gets physically stressed. So even when I get people in my office, like I'm not the typical, like, tell me how you feel. Let's talk about your feelings. I don't care about your feelings, actually. What I want to talk about is like, what do your blood labs look like? Because I've had people that have come in there.
What are you doing that you can fix?
Yeah, like what can you actually control? Let's go to the doctor. Let's get your blood labs taken. Let's look at your foundation. And man, it's even better when people are not on medication. Because now you've got a true baseline. And then let's see what we can fix and regulate physically to rule out physical issues. And once that's good, you're going to think clearly and you're going to make my job so much easier. Yeah. Because I don't want you in my office I don't want you to constantly be coming in here saying the same stuff. I also get tired of that. Like, I know people are like, well, that's job security. I don't want to hear it. I want you to come in. I want you to feel better. I want you to leave. And I want you to call me when you need me. That's how I want it.
Yeah, I don't do well. I'm married. My wife is a police officer. She's a sergeant with the county. And we don't talk at home about it. We don't. Yeah. When we come home, we go into our routines and we do our stuff that, we got farm animals and whatever. So by the time, I was gonna say, we don't discuss. Some people will ask and I'll be like, I don't know.
Bob at that point.
Yeah. I don't know, so I didn't ask her, but I'll call her and ask her for you, let me call her. And, they're like, y'all don't talk? Well, yeah, we talk, but not about work. Sometimes she gets to a point where she's like, hey, we should do that more, but
debrief.
We should do that more, but we don't.
Well, and sometimes, like I said, it's not even those things. Sometimes the how was your day for you is a little more complex. So it's like, I say this to Brian, my day is pretty complex too. I'm not out on the streets, but every hour there's something hitting me that's different, and it might be good, it might be bad. You never know what it is. There might be times that I'm in court or who knows what's happening.
Yeah.
But if you're asking me about my day, you better be ready to listen.
Yeah, don't ask. You don't want to know.
Because once I get started, I do want to get it out. And that does help. So like putting things into words, sometimes it's great. But then like you said, sometimes clearly your value system is a lot different. It's, I want to be home.
Well, she'll tell you though that I'm not a very good, I guess, nurturer, like if somebody's crying around me, I'm the guy that's like, they're there.
Yeah.
Like it's just awkward for me. It's like they're there, like, don't forget we got work tomorrow. That's just me.
Well, that's how I am too, but that's also, that's not always a bad thing.
Yeah.
Because also even in your marriage too, there's balance to that. I mean, there's a lot of balance to that.
Yeah.
In your dynamic.
Yeah.
So I'm similar. That's what's crazy is I don't take a lot of new clients. I've been doing this for 10 years and my books are closed because I like the evals and I like quick things. But if I ever do happen to get a new client, I'm pretty harsh up front. Like I'm like, hey, here's the deal. Mm-hmm. You're going to listen or you're going to leave because you're going to waste your money.
Yeah.
And I realize like a copay, that's the beautiful part about it is like your insurance will cover outpatient behavioral health.
Yeah.
Some police departments have EPS policies, 0 copay, unlimited, amazing. Like the resources are great. Yeah. But at the same time, like you're going to waste $30 coming in here for me to tell you the same thing over and over. So bring a notebook, write it down and do it or you won't be here. And then they're like, okay. Yeah. And then we just get going and usually people think like my job is to listen to you. But ultimately, once you get in, you really figure out like what it is that helps people feel better. You need to listen to me.
Yeah.
And you can feel better and then we'll go on.
Yeah.
Because it's actually supposed to work. Behavioral health is supposed to work the way your primary care doctor works. Like you go in when nothing's wrong, you establish care.
Yeah.
You find your spot and then you've got it established. So it's something you go and you check in versus waiting until your whole life is in shambles to finally ask for help.
Yeah.
But that's what, this world teaches is behavioral health is crazy and you're crazy if you go to therapy. And it's like, I get that.
There's a stigma to it.
Yeah.
Yeah. 100% there's a stigma, but I don't think that. I don't think that's here. I mean, I think
it's getting it's a lot different now. And I see a lot of police departments really opening up to that, wanting, like you said, to figure out ways to help and
offer that too.
Wellness policies and all kinds of stuff. So
I think it's a must do for a police officer. I mean, we have a policy on it myself, but we were talking, I spent a week or so ago that we got to refine it. Like we got to get it better. Mm-hmm. Sometimes policies are made just because you need one, right?
Yeah.
Which I hate that. Policy should be something that is effective, right? When you write a policy, we're our own worst enemies. We create them because we say, well, CYA, let's cover it, but like that does nobody a favor. That's really just crap.
That's the hardest part about policy. I mean, even writing ours, like it was, and I tell people, I was like, these are rules, but they're ever changing because everything's always changing.
Yeah.
So you try to have your basic like beginning policy, which is their non-negotiables. Like this is how the procedures are.
Yeah.
That CYA.
Yeah, that's right.
But then the little frilly stuff that falls off of it, like this is going to change because sometimes it's going to work and sometimes it's not.
Yeah. And I think we try to tell officers that it's really just, it's our policy, but it's a guideline, hey, if you put yourself in this box, you'll hate yourself. If you put yourself in this box with this policy, you're going to be like, this is the worst place I ever worked, right? Yeah. I mean, that's just the truth. If you go word for word by the policy, same as the law. If we enforce word for word by Title 13, I'm not sure that any of us in this room would be sitting here, right? Because there's some weird stuff in there that really needs to be taken out of a book. And then there's some stuff that needs to be added. But I think policies are sort of like that. That's the way I look at them. I mean, they're more of a guideline.
Yeah, absolutely.
Not really like the standard set by actions, right? The standard is set by what I do, what my lieutenant does. That's the set of standards.
Yes.
That's when they look at that. But before we start wrapping up, I did want to touch so I think we were talking about this earlier. I think the days of drugs. I have seen the drugs and the effect of meth and all that stuff that was the big hype. I think now, and this is just from personal experience, what I see these guys going through is dealing with people with mental health. Yes. Like mental health is the issue today. Yes. Like it's the crisis that nobody's talking. I mean, people will talk about it, but nobody's throwing money at it.
Right.
You know,
I have seen recently, I'm trying to remember who posted it, a couple of agencies. Anniston, I think Anniston is one of them. Anniston has some contract with like Highlands Health now where they can, while on scene, I think there's some sort of program that they can have like direct access to a psychologist that can assess. And I'm interested to see how that's going to go in a setting like that, because the hardest part is there's not enough room to get people stabilized. I mean, you think about when people go to the hospital or call 911 or whatever, okay, well, you're having to fight them to get them there. And then when you get them there, there's no place to take them. And then there's no
they said there's no beds or whatever.
Doctor. A lot of people, though, even in the medical field, they're not going into like psych medicine, you know?
Yeah.
So then you've got doctors that are throwing meds at people that also will mess them up even more without actually knowing how to do it correctly.
Yeah.
So it is definitely a crisis. Like, I've been thinking about how in the world can we actually help that, especially for y'all, because that's...
Yeah. So is it even possible so I look at this, you know, this may be very simplistic, but I look at our job as like a pond, right? It's a pond, and our job is to keep the pond smooth on the top, right? Nice, beautiful pond. You're looking at it, you're like, man, I want to get in there. And then, you know, you have ducks splashing around, right? But then our job is to figure out who throws big rocks in there that causes the motion, right? Causes things to change in the pond. But that's our job, is to keep the pond smooth, right? Well, that's a quick thing. That's not, law enforcement wasn't designed to be an in-depth measure, right? It was to keep the pond smooth, right? Initial call, to keep everybody moving in the direction that they should be moving, right? Not the way we think they should be moving. Just if you want to go to work, you should be able to travel to work safely, right? And go in and do your job and come home safely, right? And it's our job to make sure that we do certain things to facilitate that, right? And that's really as in-depth as it really needs to be, you know. Or if you're in your worst moment of your life and you dial 911, we're coming, right? That's our job. But that's us. I think 99% of the people, I think we've lost view of that. If you ask people, if I ask you, well, you're a little different. You have an insight. You're married to a police officer, but the normal average person can tell you the last time they dealt with law enforcement like that, right? Well, if you can't, you may be the problem. You might be why we have a job. If you were like, well, I mean, you know, I think it was last Thursday, you know, like that's, you need to do some self-evaluation, right? Because most people will say, well, oh my God, I remember it like it was yesterday. I had to dial 911 because a burglar broke into my home. You know what I mean? It was a life event for me.
Yeah.
You know, if dealing with law enforcement, other than a traffic ticket, is not a life event, you know, I don't think we're the issue. You know what I'm saying? I think...
I honestly, and this could be a whole nother topic for a whole nother day, but I'm talking the breakdown of the home, the lack of security in the home, the lack of people recognizing the basic, easy things. Like I said, like you've got kids now, you've got the blue light, you've got the kids are raised by iPads, like,
oh, it's terrible.
Sugar. You could go into all kinds of stuff. And I'm not that crunchy granola type of girl.
Yeah.
Okay. But I do understand and value the importance of like making sure kids get enough protein and water.
Yeah.
So there's so much that goes into it. And then y'all basically are the outliers dealing with the aftermath of all of that. Because everybody's like, oh, we'll call the cops. They'll deal with it. Okay. Well, that's again why y'all are very underpaid.
Yeah, that's right.
Like, you're left to deal with everything that nobody else can.
And that's why officers get in trouble too.
Yes.
It's because it's too much to put on one.
It's very different.
Yeah. But how did they fix it? I don't know. I agree that there's no, like, how you
fix it is we'll slowly start losing law enforcement. You see the field seriously declining. I mean,
there's nobody coming in right now.
And I will say that doing these evals, I've seen a recent wave of, you know, everybody says the same. I'm always like, what's your goal? I want to help people.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, let's figure out how we can actually do that. Because you're put in a position where it's hard for you to help people. Now, the community-based policing structures, I feel like, help when you know your community and communicate and talk and you know your people, but that also gets dangerous at times. So it's every day is different.
Yeah.
Every day you've almost got to approach it differently depending on how the vibe or the environment is.
Yeah, Moody's different in that sense. That's why I've never left the community here. And I think it goes a little deeper than just, our community loves us. Our community feels like they've stood on 411 twice and held up signs for 2 officers who were murdered, right? So they have an ownership. They're bought in, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
I hate to see that if there was anything that positive that ever came of it, it's hard to see that, but I believe that's it.
Sense,
that they're, my dad, stood out there the first time, right? When they, lined the streets and stuff and stood behind the police department. Now, I was in the department when the last one happened, and I think that the community, I don't know, it was like if somebody took something from them too,
that makes sense.
So that it changes the
hate it happened, like you said.
It changes the fabric of it. It's totally different. You can't go anywhere else and get the feeling that you get here. Like you can't. I'm sorry. Like I don't want to. You just can't. Like you can't do it. And so that's why. Like I don't leave. I don't have any plans to leave. I like it here. So I don't know. In an aspect, Moody is very different like that.
Even the evals, you can definitely tell where they're applying. Because I've done them for so many different agencies. Like if their persona will fit with the personality of the police department. So I teach people about projection too. Like we're taught in the business courses, like your business is a projection of you. What is it saying? Where are the errors? Yeah. Where are the holes? And then how is that reflecting you as the leader? So that's something too that I've really taught my people, even my office administration. Like I want you to look at, because they're my lieutenants or they're my captains, right? So it's like I'll be like, I've delegated these things to you. The overarching feel of the business is this. What are you doing at each location, and what is the vibe in your department? Yeah. What are you projecting into my business? And we're constantly having to look at that, because that's what helps them be better leaders, so that we can carry out the policy and make sure everybody's good and taken care of. So
is that Simon Sinek?
I don't know. Is it Leaders Eat Last? I bought that book.
Yeah.
I need to read it.
That's great. Have you read all the Why series? Find Your Why, Know Your Why. A great series of books.
I have his book.
Yeah. I don't read a lot. Okay?
I don't either.
So I don't claim to read a lot. I will read some of that. It's phenomenal.
I bought that book, Leaders Eat Last, and I need to read it. That's a lot of that's Lisa Dion. Like that's the woman that I've learned a lot of business, and she takes all kinds of DeMartini courses but again, a lot of those things are universal. So if you can tap into the right information, a lot of the biggest leaders are saying the same thing. Yeah. And you apply those principles and you control what you can control.
We're coming up on our segment block, but man, I've been sucked into the conversation. I hope everybody else has. You're here. Plug yourself if you want to. This is it. You do evaluations of law enforcement leaders. If you're listening,
I do. Yes. So I'm Oxford, Rainbow City. My name's Anjuli. House counseling, but I do a lot of law enforcement pre-evals and fit for duty and all kinds. I do consultation with agencies a lot of the time on wellness policies and all kinds of stuff. Yeah. So I'll come to you. I've done roll calls where I've gone in for an hour and talked. Like there's all kinds of stuff we can do.
That's awesome. So now I'm gonna when we get done, I'm gonna ask you like, well, hey, how can I, well, thank you for coming.
Yes, thank you for having me.
It's been a great. It's flown by. So
it really did. Thank you.
That means it's good. Thank you. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.